everyone, and welcome back to It's Time to Talk for our 4th episode. And today we're going to be talking all things siblings, I guess, and how you may have lost the same parent as your sibling, but that you can have similar but also completely different experiences to your sibling in regards to losing a parent for a whole multitude of different reasons. But yeah, so we are joined by some amazing people today, and I'm with the lovely trustee Harry, who will be hosting with me today. So I thought we could kind of just do a little introduction to everybody, say a little bit about who you are and our situation, then we can get into it. But I'll start. I'm Libby. I'm It's Time's Marketing and Operations Exec, and I have been working for It's Time for about 9 months now, which is super exciting. And I have a younger brother. I lost my dad when I was 14, 10 years ago. And me and my brother there's a bit of an age gap between us, which I think is probably part of the reason as to why we've had different experiences, and he's boy and everything. But yeah, a few years ago, kind of realised there's things I can't relate to him on, even though it was both our dad that we lost. So that's kind of a bit of inspiration for today's topic, but I will now pass to Harry.
Thanks, Libby. So I'm Harry. I'm one of the trustees at It's Time, one of the founding trustees who've been working with the charity for nearly 2 years. We're about 18 months old now. So I lost my dad 18 years ago when I was 16 years old. I'm here with my sister Rachel today, and we also have an older sister, Charlotte. So we're super close in age. I think there's only 3 or 4 years between us. But as I'm sure will be unveiled during this discussion, we all have very similar and different experiences of what's happened from losing our dad. And just happy to be here and chat with a great bunch of people. I'll hand over to Rachel.
Yes, hello, I'm Rachel. I'm the youngest of 3, like Harry said. I've got an older sister who's 3 years older than me, and Harry's 18 months older than myself. So I'm actually the youngest. We lost our dad in 2005 when I was 15 years old, going into year 11 at school. So quite an important time, and also a slightly confusing one as well. So yeah, really looking forward to having this discussion today. I think it's a great thing to do, and I think It's Time is an incredible charity, and I'm happy to join in and get involved.
Thank you for joining us. Yeah, whoever wants to go next.
If you go. I'll go. Hi, so I'm Sinead McCarthy. I'm the oldest of the McCarthy sisters. And I think I first found It's Time, I think shortly after you guys came out, because I was trying to look for, I guess, better support for young adults, and I didn't really know where to go or what advice to do, and you guys popped up on my Instagram. So really grateful to be here speaking with you guys today. We lost our dad just over 3 years ago on the 6th of December. He passed away really suddenly and really unexpectedly. But I have 2 younger sisters, and we're all very close, but kind of same as what Libby says, even though we're very close in age and as a unit, that doesn't mean that we've all felt the same things all throughout this period. So it's been a really good opportunity to chat about it. I'll pass you to Rasheen now.
Hi, I'm Rasheen. I am the middle sister of the McCarthy sisters. So Sinead is my older sister, and Harry and Rachel were 18 months apart. And then we have my younger sister Kira as well. Not too much to add to this. Thanks to Sinead for talked to when we lost dad, which was 3 years ago. But yeah, interesting times to be in the McCarthy sisters project and in sort of the same time period, and same time of year, I guess, that we lost him as well. So yeah, happy to be here and looking forward to discussion.
Thank you both so much. Well, thank you everyone for being here. And yeah, that's so interesting that's how you found us, Sinead, because I think that's why the trustees originally set up It's Time. It was there's amazing support out there for like child bereavement, whether it's that you're a parent and you've lost a child, or if you're a child and you've maybe lost a sibling, or anybody. But there's nothing specifically out there until the trustee set up its time for 16 to 30-year-olds roundabout who have lost a parent specifically. And as we all know, losing a parent, it's a very, very, very difficult thing, and yeah, impacts basically every aspect of your life somehow. So if we kind of, I guess, maybe kickstart with, again, this can be a super organic conversation, but if we maybe start off with a bit of context. I know you guys said that you lost your dad very suddenly, so I'm guessing there maybe wasn't an illness beforehand, or maybe there was and it was just very rapid deterioration. But obviously, Harry and Rachel, I know that your dad had been ill for a small amount of time. So maybe if we talk about first, and my dad had been ill for a very long time, so maybe if we talk first about just kind of how maybe things were beforehand, and again, if there wasn't much prior because it was sudden, that's absolutely fine. But I know for me, part of my grief journey started before my dad even died. So whoever would like to go first would be great.
We'll go. Okay. So our dad was in the forces, so we used to travel around a lot. But even as a family, we were always super close to him. I'd say we were three daddy's girls all between us, because our mom moved to Dubai when we were a bit younger. So we've always just had our dad as our, like, I guess, our main parent throughout our younger childhood years. And I think both the girls were living at dad's at the time. I just moved out, and as you said, it wasn't really, it was, for us, it was completely unexpected. He hadn't had any had no prior like suggestions that his heart was gonna stop. He just went to the gym and then didn't come home on one night, and I guess because that all happened like so fast, we went from having a dad to Kira, our younger sister, having to answer the door to the policeman to tell her that her dad had died. I think we went into grieving it was weird. It wasn't fast for the first couple of days. I know we all didn't really believe it, and we didn't really know. I honestly thought he was going to walk through the door at any point. When the doorbell kept going off and it was just people sending bunches of flowers, there was like a really strong part of my brain that thought, oh, they've definitely just got this all wrong and he's going to be fine. And then I guess once that wore off and you realise it is just more flowers and my dad isn't going to walk back through the door, I guess that's when we really banded together and had to start planning what we were going to do next as a group of sisters.
That's so hard. I know the other scenario, one thing isn't harder than the other, but with me, because it was such a polar opposite experience, I guess, that I had. That's such a unique experience, you know, to kind of just it to be really like no heads up, one day this is it, the next day it's something completely different. And I'm sure because of that level of, I guess, shock factor, that like different people respond to shock in a completely different way as well, you know. So yeah, I guess maybe before we then go on to how we all like experience it differently, Harry and Rachel, do you maybe want to give a bit of context before your dad passed away?
You go first.
Yeah, so I was just thinking as we started the conversation about the shock thing, and I think what for us, well, for me, for us, Dad was he had a few health problems, so he had a few like surgeries and stuff like 10-15 years before he died, but even that still didn't take away the size of the shock factor. And I think for me personally, it was the shock of him not being there versus being there one day, not the next type thing. And no matter for me how ill he might have been, how super fit, healthy he would have been, for me, it was still the kind of same kind of shock. And it's just that we were on holiday at the time, and dealing with it while we were away was an added layer of the things that we had to go through. And similar as we were talking about, we came home and there was people at our house and there was flowers and stuff everywhere. And in some ways, it's super nice to come back to kind of a caring community. However, on the other side, you just want to lock yourself in a dark room and just hide away and just hope that person's going to come back through that front door. And I think the shock is, you can't compare to people's situations. And this is part of what we're here to talk about today, is every situation is unique and people define and have a scale of what shock is, to however they wish it to be. But yeah, I can't comprehend that is, the reality of just that person just completely, vanishing off the face of the earth. And there's moments today, and I'll have for the rest of my life, where I just want them to come back through that door, like you say, and it will never go away. It's just, crazy.
Yeah, I think even though when you understand that somebody isn't at full health, even if they are at full health, anything can happen at any moment. I think you can prepare in some ways for things to not go the way you want them to, but you can never prepare enough for losing somebody in quite a traumatic way. I think because we sort of were on holiday, we kind of were just going out for a walk, and next thing you knew, on that walk, your father passes away. It's something that you don't get over. You may learn to deal with what's happened, and you learn how to manage your grief, but I don't think you can ever get over the trauma of that. So I think a lot of the time when you talk about grief, there's so many different elements to grief, and it's never black and white. You can get upset and you can cry, but actually when you're adding in quite a traumatic experience into that when you're a teenager, I think it's really hard to get through that. But when you have like a close unit like we do, and like with the village, and having that community around us was incredible. But when something is still super raw, it's almost like you're not quite ready for it. And especially when you're young, like I remember when it happened, I got home and I was like, I read this stuff in the paper, because at that point you're still buying newspapers, you still got the free paper through your letterbox, like the Solihull Observer or something. I always remember like just flicking through that when I was younger and being like, you'd see stories like this in the paper, and then I was like, but it's not a story, it's my life. It's just happened to us, it's just happened to my family. And that was something which I always remember being quite a strong memory of mine, was thinking like, this is the stuff you read about. Like you could make a film out of that day, really, and I think it'd do quite well in the box office, to be honest. But like, it's like that shouldn't be, but sadly it is, and you just got to crack on with it.
Yeah, I think so. To give a bit of background with how with my dad and everything, so he and my brother's dad, I always say what you said earlier, Shay, when my dad's like, me and my brother's dad, it's like, oh, he is my dad. So I'm like, oh god, yeah, sorry. When our dad became ill, my brother had just been born. He was about 10 weeks old and I was 6, and he was diagnosed with MS, multiple sclerosis, and he had been diagnosed with, kind of looking back now, my mum was like, he'd obviously had it several years before that, but it had kind of gone under the radar, and then by the time he had this attack, it kind of was then very visible, and so he was diagnosed with secondary progressive multiple sclerosis, which is one of the later stages of it, and it's quite aggressive, and you can deteriorate pretty quickly, and within 6 years he was in a care home, and he had such a severe attack that he couldn't speak, he couldn't walk, he couldn't talk, he couldn't do anything for 2 years. So he was in the care home. And I would say for me, because there was 2 years where he was in that care home, I was 12, 13 to 14, and I felt a real sense of relief when he died, because there was this feeling of he was in the way he was living. It was so painful to see every single weekend, and it was traumatic just seeing him, because he'd often because he couldn't really breathe for himself as well. He had a tracheotomy, so often fluid would get stuck in his lungs and he'd start choking, and he'd literally, like, he'd be in so much, physical pain and everything. The staff would rush in, suction him out, and you'd think, oh my God, is he, what's going to happen? So for us, when it got to him passing away, I was almost ready for it, because I was just so tired of, and I was only 14, but I knew I was tired of the whole situation. And the difference within that is, so I was brought into quite a lot of decision making, and I guess we can tap into this a bit later on, like different family roles of when you lose a parent and what that then looks like. But yeah, because my brother was so much younger than me, he was quite oblivious to a lot of stuff. And so that's something that I've had to realise, is we both lost our dad, but we had actually very different experiences. And there's other people I've spoken to since working for It's Time who I can relate to more, even though we didn't lose the same parent, but because of like the overlap of our experiences. So I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody, but I guess we could maybe first talk about, maybe Sinead and Roisin, how initially you both experienced it, whether that was your similarities or differences or anything like that, and Kira as well, with whatever should be happy for you guys to share.
Yeah, no, I think we all kind of shared like fairly different, well, I think we all had different experiences right afterwards. And I think, largely in a way that's due to, even though we are fairly similar in age, we all were doing so many different things and had so many different sort of different stages of life that we were in. And I think I probably struggled outwardly quite a bit more afterwards, especially obviously Dad's death was then followed by a lockdown, which I think is obviously a really unique experience, but no doubt happens to so many different people. And I think the kind of increased feelings of sort of isolation and I guess kind of distress that you get from just the lockdown itself was then matched with having lost someone probably for the first time, but also a parent. And as Sinead says, kind of Dad pretty much brought us up on his own, so such a sort of our only parent. And so I think, yeah, it really hit me. I think I really struggled with it. I fell into kind of like a period of depression, which I found really hard. I tried to go to grief counselling, which I found even harder than the whole thing. And I think, yeah, I definitely think we all kind of took different experiences. I think mine was probably quite quick afterwards, I would say. But I'll let Sinead kind of speak to her own experience.
I think after the shock, so I was the only one that lived not with Dad. So my two sisters, not only did we lose Dad, but they lost the place they were going to live due to a complicated relationship with the person that he was with prior to his death. So my sisters both very quickly moved into my flat. So it was almost like everything we thought we had as a normal just got ripped up very, very fast. So I went from having my everyday in my little 2-bedroom flat with Rob to my two sisters living here again, one on the sofa and one in our spare room. And as Roisin said, that happened over lockdown, which I really enjoyed, because it meant we were able to, like, I guess when you have those dark days that Harry referred to at the start, like at least I knew everyone in here was also having a really bad day. And I think I had to go into the office once, and someone said, "Oh, I know just how you feel. My cat just passed away, and I've never had to, like, I'm really sorry about your cat. Like, I genuinely am." Just what an awful sentence opener. And then I just turned around and walked straight out, and I didn't go back for a long time, because I just thought, I can't handle, I didn't want to not be empathetic, but equally I was like, oh, it's not the same thing. And I think people that lose parents or lose people are very good at recognizing everyone's grief is different. And I think that's the first thing that you learn, because you're the only person that's ever known the person that you've lost. And exactly the whole point of this conversation, even if multiple people knew that person, they will have a different relationship with them, so they'll feel it all differently. To speak for Kira was still at school, and we took her to her Christmas party, and she went dressed up as like the poo emoji. And she didn't tell any of her friends on that first day, so she went back in to this party, and we were in such a shock of like pretending it hadn't happened. She quite literally told none of her friends, went and had this whole party whilst we sat in the car and waited for her to come out. And then I think she got through about half an hour of it, Rasheen, and then she came home. But I think as Rasheen says, I think immediately I went into a bit more practical purpose, trying to look after Kira and Rasheen and make sure that it was okay. But then I've since obviously had to rely on Rasheen and Kira's support in more ways than I probably thought I would have to over the next few years. But I'll stop so other people can chat.
Yeah, I think for me, there was quite a lot of confusion that went on for quite some time. I think, like I mentioned previously to you guys when we first met, that I didn't actually believe that it had happened. I saw it happen, unfortunately, but I didn't kind of believe it had. So I used to spend some time sort of, when I'd get home from school, I'd sort of wait in the bay window in the house we lived in, and I'd sit in the bay window and almost wait for his car to come home. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, I know he's died, but it was just that little bit of hope where I was just like, I don't want to accept it. Don't want to admit to myself that this is what it is. So I was very confused for some time, but it was also the summer holidays. So once I then got back into school, I then got back into a routine of not having as much spare time. And then it became easier, but I think I struggled with being able to talk with friends that it would resonate with, because a lot of people who were in my friendship groups hadn't actually experienced something like that. But, you know, I had a very close friend of mine who I've grown up with, and I was christened with her, and she knew my father really well. So she was really crucial for me with dealing with it, because I would be able to talk to her about different things that might have happened or different things I would feel, and she would kind of be like, yeah, no, I feel the same. Like, she knew my father for just as long as I did. So that massively helped. And I think if I didn't have that in her, I would have struggled a lot more. Just being able to have a conversation with somebody at that age who is a similar age to you is quite difficult. And this is why I love what It's Time's doing, because the resources that were available at school when, 18 years ago, for me, they weren't that great. There wasn't really, a lot of teachers would come up and talk to me about it, or take me to one side, or go into a classroom and bring me into the classroom, but then they made a big deal out of it. And actually that wasn't the sort of thing that I was going to respond very well to. As much as they were trying to do the right thing, it was almost like there wasn't enough understanding of how to adapt what they might do with one student to me. So I think that was hard, because then all your friends are like, oh, where's Rachel? Why has she gone into that classroom with that teacher? and then it's a conversation you then have to have after it. And that's why I really rate super highly what the charity is doing, because it's really trying to almost help educate and raise awareness in the schools, so the resources are in place to support grieving youngsters, kind of exactly how I was. But yeah.
I remember when your teacher at school came and got me out of class once. And I was going into sixth form, so AS level, and I was in registration or whatever you used to do in the at the start of the day, and Rachel's teacher came and pulled me out of class and was like, your sister's playing up a little bit, and I was like, okay. I was like, I really don't know what you want me to do, to be honest with you, because, you know, we've had a rough summer. Can you, you know, what can you do to potentially help us? And, you know, as Rachel was saying, I mean, big kudos to schools. They have come a long way with what they do with the kids, and it is a lot more one-on-one than back then. But like Rachel said, losing dad in the summer and then going back to school, you're kind of thrown back into, right, you've got to get on with it and do your homework by tomorrow. And if you completely fall off the bandwagon, you fall behind, and you're kind of ingrained at school, and probably, you know, as you go into uni, to keep up and crack on, basically. And for me personally, I kind of just did that until I went to uni. Then I graduated, and 5-6 years later, I hadn't probably addressed the elephant in the room of the fact that you know, dad wasn't there, and, you know, and what had happened because of how quickly the pressure cooker years is what I always call them, from when you're 16 to 30, of the fact that you've got to technically, like society tells you, to achieve so much in such a short space of time. So for me, I go through emotions of what I think I did, and 17, 18 years on, I think one thing, and at first I think I 100% ignored it, but then I kind of stood up and did the eulogy with my sisters behind me at dad's funeral. So I didn't ignore it in a way. So you know, and it's really hard to kind of articulate, you know, what you did and didn't do. And you kind of just, you become very reactive to how you feel about certain things. And if you feel like doing something, you do it. And if you don't, you don't. And it's kind of it is so individual based on how that person feels at the time. And that person could get up one day and think, I'm going to go out there and find a friend and talk to them about X. And then the next day could come and go, no way in hell. There's no way in hell I want to talk about it. And for me, as I've got older, it has become very much like that for me. And we spoke a bit about shock before, and obviously there's two parts of it, in my opinion, that you have the moment of shock of that specific moment, and then you have the shock elements that follow on from it. And for me, they are the hardest part, and, you know, it doesn't ever go away, but you do get stronger with it, and your community and people around you, you know, gets wider. So for me, you just adapt, and, you know, you build skills to deal with your situation. I suppose it's just be true to yourself of how you feel, and don't try and do too much, because that's when you might start to put too much pressure on yourself. But that's me being 18 years wiser. And if I'm perfectly honest, the last 2 years, I feel I can say that, because I have moved forward, but it took me 15, 16 years.
Yeah, it's a lot of stages you have to go through. And I think we're quite resilient. I'd probably speak for both of us. We're quite resilient people. But where I have suffered over the last couple of years especially, is by being resilient, sometimes I've kind of forgotten to process. And then actually that being resilient is not a good thing. It's of no value to you if you're not processing what's happening. And I think, you know, dad died when I was 15. I'm 32 now, and I've, you know, from the age of 29 to 32, I've probably grieved more for him than I did from 15 to 29. So there's so many different stages you go to. And when people say, you know, as time goes on, the grieving gets better, it doesn't, it just changes. The focus changes, your environment changes, where you focus your energy and your attention changes. And actually the different stages, one stage is never easier than the other, or, you know, it's just the process you take. You just have to give yourself time. I think if you don't give yourself enough time, and if you're not just living in what's happening now and being present and mindful, then yeah, I think it does bite you.
I think. Did you say you were 34 or 44?
I'm 32.
What you just said there, Rachel, about like the different stages. I saw this post the other day, and it was, I guess, can be applied to anyone who is maybe grieving with you in your family, whoever the person is to them. But it was about how, and it's something that I've had to really be patient with my mum, which I know is a slightly different relationship, but, and then accepting with my brother, is that we had different experiences, even though we all lost the same person, and that there have been times over the years where I have wanted to share my grief with my mum or with my brother, particularly with my brother, I think, because he's my sibling, and it's just this feeling of it, he's our dad. And having to be, even like this episode, I really wanted him to come on, and like and me and him have had so many conversations over the years. We're a very very open family. We chat about anything really, and I was like, oh, you know, please can you come on? And he was like, oh, I'll think about it. And I sent Harry this like 5-minute voice note, because I was like, oh, she could come on, but me having to accept that's okay, like that's okay, and that's not. But I think it's this feeling of wishing you could share that with somebody, if that makes any sense. And I think coming to a place of acceptance of it's okay that we're different in that aspect, and that's something I need to be. That's something I'm definitely working on, like 100%, and that you can then connect with other people, maybe aren't your siblings, but you know, to find other ways to connect. But I was going to say, I know last time, well, when we spoke in our initial call, one of the things you brought up, Sinead, which I thought was such an interesting thing, which I know I've definitely experienced, is the whole guilt element of things, being the oldest sibling. And I know with you guys, you were both saying about how, you know, Kira didn't, you know, won't have your dad there for certain things that you guys have had your dad there for. But also certain things, Rasheen, that Sinead will have had, you know, your dad there for, but then you haven't as well. So I guess maybe if we speak maybe a little bit about that, kind of like feelings of guilt or resentment as well. I know I've had lots of resentment towards my brother for different things, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's I think it's a thing that I never really, it's like the worst guilt, because I genuinely feel guilty that I had more time on earth in years, hours, than my sisters, and there's nothing I could have ever done about that. But Dad died, like, I think it was about a week before Kira's 18th birthday, and that was the first, like, because that's such a milestone birthday as it is, we went into practical mode and just we did this whole party as if like it was everything's fine. And then it was after that we had the university applications, and I remember when me and Rasheen and Rob dropped Kira off on her first day at uni, you could see all the groups of parents looking at us like, why are there 3 young people dropping off another young person? I'm also a lot shorter, so everyone thought that I was the one being dropped off. But and I think we got around it, we got through it by trying to make it funny. So we took her and did the biggest alcohol shop ever, and like didn't buy her anything practical. But then when I was in the car on the way home, I just got hit by like the biggest wave of like, Dad should have been there to see that, like, and he's going to now miss so many of these things, and there's nothing that I can do to replace that or replicate it or And people say things like, oh, your dad would have been proud. Like, I know he would have been, but it still hurts that he's not the one there to say it. And I know people say it with like lots of dad's friends have still been really good and have stayed in touch. And they always tell us that. And like, it's really nice to hear from people that he knew, but that guilt is something I've definitely had. But one of the things I've had even worse not worse, that sounds so bad. In the call before, Rasheen and Kira and you guys talked about, they talked about how obviously lots of my friends and Rob knew dad, whereas they're at a stage of their life because they're a bit younger or at different stages where they're meeting people that never got the chance to meet. And then I've really not stopped thinking about how awful that is for them, the fact. But I'll let Rasheen expand on that, so I'm not talking for your questions.
The only thing I would add is, like, I personally, and I do think I speak for Kira with this one as well, but I don't want Sinead, for example, to feel guilty for the additional time that she had, because in reality she had 18 months, and of memories that I remember, I have, I had 21 years as well. Like, I had a full lifetime. Okay, yeah, I don't remember being picked up when I was 0 years old, but I don't think Sinead does either. And so I feel upset if I think that that's because there's so many areas where I can understand why guilt might trip in, but I just don't want my sisters to feel guilty, especially not Sinead, where she has had those couple more experiences. Like, I would never want her to feel guilty, and in a way it's just such a horrible feeling. But I think to Sinead's point, it is interesting, because I think it becomes almost more special to me, the relationship I have with, for example, Sinead's fiance Rob. He met dad, and so now in my head, and I know Kira feels the same because we've spoken about this, but he is kind of the closest person that we'll sort of bet a boy with, for example. And so I think, like, not having those experiences are hard. And I think for me, it catches me like at the weirdest times. I'll just be like wanting to throw a strop or whatever about the fact that he's not there. And then I'm like, oh, he's not there, so I can't do anything about it. And I kind of get myself in this spin of thinking it's really unfair, but then thinking it's not. I think in my head, because it wasn't a choice, and not that death is a choice, but because I know that he hasn't actively chosen to not be there, in my head I kind of remind myself that it's just unfair. and I guess I'm still trying to work through that and kind of understand how I can make myself sit with that, because there are huge things that he's going to miss. And we've got Sinead's wedding coming up next year, and dad won't be there for that, but she has her two best friends walking her down the aisle. And I think immediately in my head, I've not even got a partner, but I'm still thinking, right, how can I start now reframing that? So in my head, when I get there, obviously there'll be a part of me that's gutted that he's not there, but I'll have hopefully had time to sit with that and like play it over and kind of prepare for a different day and a different way of doing things. So kind of trying to process it in that way. I think, I don't know if that kind of resonates with anyone. Probably quite unique. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a bit of a crazy way of looking at it, but I think for now it's helping, so it might change over the coming years.
No, that definitely resonates with me. I think I can resonate with you, Rasheen, in the sense of I don't have an older sibling who kind of I guess is with someone and who maybe met my dad or anything like that, so there isn't that element of it, but that is something that I do think about. And I do think, like, our like for Luke, my brother, and me, both of the people who we are with will definitely not know my dad, and that is just such a weird feeling. And it's like, and that's why I think I maybe said when we had our initial call that this Christmas I want to like video all of my dad's family being like, right, tell me a funny story about my dad, because I need to have this on video, because I want to show this, but also not just who I'm with, but like if I have kids, I want his family, I want them to know his family and get to know him through his family, if that makes sense. And I know I'm obviously his family, and my mum was with him from such a young age, but they were also there in that chunk of his life before, you know, my mum was there and everything. But I can also relate to you, Sinead, with the feeling of guilt, because when I asked Luke if that he'd be happy with me sharing this, and he said he was happy for me to share it. But when the summer that my dad died, me and my brother would always go up to my mum's parents, like for half term or something, to give her a break and whatever. And we went up there, me and him, for maybe like 5 days. It was after the funeral, and my grandparents were playing home videos, and some of them were of them when they were like, yeah, in the RAF, they were in Hong Kong or whatever. And then it got to, you know, slowly the more modern day ones, if you will, the ones with sound. And one of them was their 50th wedding anniversary, and my mum was pregnant with my brother, and I was like hobbling around doing cartwheels, like causing havoc as usual. And my brother and my nana and granddad were like, Luke, you're in mummy's tummy, you're there, you're in that video. And my dad was walking about. This was before he became ill, so before he was like, he had like a walking stick, or before his balance was off and everything, or before he was in like a wheelchair, not a wheelchair, a mobility scooter thing. And anyway, Luke just kind of like went to the toilet. I didn't think anything of it. And then it maybe been about 10 minutes, and I was like, oh, I'll just go check on him, because he was 8 at the time. And I could tell he was still in the toilet, and I like knocked on the door. I was like, are you all right? Because I do, you know, when you just feel like something's up, I was like, something's not quite right here. And I could hear him crying, and I was like, Luke, I was like, what's wrong? What's happened? Are you okay? And he was like, no. He was like, go away. And I said, no. I said, please open the door. I said, you know, let's go upstairs. Let's just have a chat. Like, are you okay? And anyway, we ended up going upstairs, and very much. And when I think back now, it makes me so emotional, because he was only 8, but he knew what he was feeling. And he said, he was like, you got more time with Daddy than I did. And I just remember bursting into tears, because I was like, he knows that. Like, he's 8 years old. And he can, you know, he's realised Libby got 6, and there's 6 years between us. She got 6 years more than I did. And I was also, it was when I was 6 that Luke was born, which was when my dad became ill. And I got 6 years of him not ill as well. And we've spoken about it since. And, you know, I think there's an element of jealousy from his end, of like, not jealousy, but like, I wish I had that. And there's an element of my end of like, I wish you had that. I wish so badly that you had that. So yeah. And then on the flip side of that, because he was so much younger, it was like me and my mum looking after my brother and my dad. He was also shielded from a lot of stuff. So there's also this feeling of like we've had conversations since where, and it makes me very sad, because he's like, you know, I don't feel as connected to Dad as you and Mum. Certainly not Mum. Like, he was like, I genuinely don't. And I think whilst I wouldn't want to feel like that, I think there's, and as we've all said, our grief is so different. And just because you've lost someone at a certain age doesn't mean to say that you experience things less. But he's had a kind of, I don't even know this. I wish he was here, because and I don't want to describe on his behalf, but there's been certain things that I was exposed to that he then wasn't. So then I've got feelings of kind of slight jealousy or resentment towards him, of like, you didn't have to go through that. So sorry, I feel like I rambled for ages there, but yeah, so I can relate on like both ends of the scale for sure. So I don't know if anyone else can relate to that as well.
Yeah, I actually made notes on my phone so I wouldn't forget what to say. Yeah, guilt's a really interesting conversation, really. And the first thing I wrote down was the guilt I held with everyday stuff I would have done, whether he was still alive or not. So because things like if I'd go out and drink too much, I'd feel guilty and go, he'd be disappointed. Or if I did bad at school, it would be, he'd be disappointed because I had bad grades. Or everyday items, I always put a guilt spin on it because I didn't want to let him down, even with really, really silly stuff. And then the second thing I thought of was stuff because he had passed away that I held as guilt. For example, oh, I didn't put the bins out. Dad usually does that. I've let him down. I feel guilty. Like really, really small things I just manifest and just grew into big things and things like, you know, because we grew up in quite a small village, everyone knows everyone. We got a fantastic community of people. I felt a bit of guilt with feeling I had to manage everyone's expectations. And that could be, my dad's not here anymore, so I need to fill that void and go and see his friends, go and see his brother, go and see so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, because he wasn't there. And I felt guilty if I didn't do it, or if we didn't go to his grave one day. And these things all just swirled around until I got older and just learned, I suppose, and just thought, he's always around me. I'm just going to talk to him in everything I do. And we just have a laugh about it. I talk out loud quite a lot, you know, things I might do even today. And I think that guilt has changed from micro, loads of mini guilts into a big guilt of, I don't feel like I knew him very well at all, and I wish I knew him better. So I have a lot of guilt today to go, why didn't I and get into his brain and learn everything about him so I could share all the stories in the world, which I can to a degree, but with a mature head of a 34-year-old, I just can't. And, you know, I hold a bit of guilt over my head because I wish, you know, and, you know, it's the same with, you know, my grandparents as well. I do wish that, you know, I had longer with him, like you say, to learn everything about him and what, you know, and this links in with milestones in those years. For example, buying a house, you know, what was it like when he bought his first house? I was like, I don't know. So it's like weird things like that, which you get onto when those occurrences happen. And those, yeah, that's the thing.
You don't have the age we lost him. We didn't have much in common with him because Harry couldn't go out and have a beer with him. Well, I couldn't go out and have a beer with him. So you have interests which are similar, but, you know, I played a lot of sport, so he would take me to play sport and drive me up and down the country. But sometimes I didn't enjoy going, but he was like, no, you're really good, you should go. And it was like you had something in common where you were both going to do it, but your actual interests, let's say, you don't realize until you're a little bit older than 15, 16, 17 years old, what you do have in common with your parents. And I think, I mean, I'm speaking for you here, but it's a classic, you know, every lad when they turn 18 always wants to go to the pub and shout their dad a beer. And it's like,
I did. I bought one and poured it on his grave.
But I think for me, the guilt thing for me is quite interesting. So, like, obviously the guilt from being there on the day. So to get deep, unfortunately, we were there when he had a heart attack, and there was not really any option but to stand there. But I had just done a first aid course before the end of that school year in year 10. And I thought, well, I could have, in my head for some time, I thought if I had given him CPR mouth to mouth, I thought that maybe I could have made a difference. Somebody else was actually there to do it, which is actually my husband's father did it. But I thought if it was me, maybe I could have changed the direction that unfortunately it went in. That's impossible. That's absolutely impossible. But for a 15-year-old, it's not. You don't think like that. And then you go through these weird things where you think of little things that happened. It's like, did we need to go on that walk? Why didn't we all just say, no, we're not going to go on that walk today, let's just go to the beach? But really, reality speaking, that was going to happen whether we'd gone to the beach or whether we'd done that walk. That path had already been sort of chosen for him, I think, with his health and things like that. And then I spent quite a few years not just thinking if I could have helped him on that day, but then I just felt like maybe sometimes I was a little bit too naughty, which would raise his blood pressure. And I just thought, oh my goodness, I'm literally gonna really cause myself some emotional damage if I keep thinking like that. But unfortunately, at that age, all you have is really your thoughts about it, and you don't, let's say, have a partner or a husband or a wife or, you know, a friend at school who's gone through the same thing, like I said, that you feel like you can say this stuff to and they will squash it, because the intelligence level at 15 is not particularly high when it comes to grief. And everybody grieves differently. So if you go around this table now and everyone defined grief, we'd all say a different thing. And I think, you know, that was especially hard for me. And they're the things that I didn't allow myself to deal with for a long period of time until I did get slightly older. And then I realized I couldn't do anything about it. But you always think like, oh, just what if? And those what ifs are extremely painful even now. But I didn't pour a beer on his grave, so I think that's what it ought to be.
I think just the thing I want just to add on to what Rachel was saying as well is, Rachel, Charlotte, and I, as I mentioned, we're obviously pretty close in age, and as I got older, I felt guilt of how much my mom had to do to kind of prop us up, and she would be the first one to beat herself up probably and say she never did enough or whatever, but she has done more than enough in every single occasion that we faced. And the fact that for, I don't know, 8 years we were kind of still dependency on her because we were at school, college, uni, and the fact that, you know, she kept it all going and paid the mortgage off, and you know, from single person household income and all this stuff is amazing. And managing that guilt of, you know, sometimes when you look back and you kind of react and you bark at your mom and, or, you know, or whoever, have a go at them, whether it or Rachel and Charlotte, and you kind of like, in the moment you feel like you've done the right thing, but then that guilt kicks in straight away to go, oh bloody hell, I shouldn't have done it like that. But I just wanted to add that as well.
I was going to say, you kind of touched on it, Harry, a little bit, but about like when your dad passed away, you felt this obligation of, you know, to kind of, and I guess because for you, because it was your dad who passed away and you've got two sisters and you're left with your mum, that whole kind of legacy pressure maybe of like, you know, of I need to stand up now, I need to fulfill my dad's role in certain aspects and everything like that. Like, would you say there's, and I feel like there's like lots of different roles, obviously not just that role, but for all of us maybe, where you lose a parent and it's like you take on a certain role, or your new family dynamic, however that looks, everyone begins to play into a certain role. What would everyone say was their experiences of different roles? I don't know if you want to go first, Harry, because of that. But
again, it's really interesting. Sometimes you have to dig back through the grey hairs into the archive of what you thought you did in those moments. Personally, no idea. I felt like I kind of made it up. I felt like without the people around us to like lead me, for example, I remember going to the council building to do the paperwork for the fact that someone, you know, died and stuff, and obviously I went with somebody else, so it's kind of like you just kind of shift the move to what was needed. And this is the sad thing with the fact that it just, everything just carries on, and you're just like, whoa, I just want to like stop, and I don't want to go and do this and that. And then the other side of me is, you know, I remember like the eulogy, you know, speak on behalf of Rachel and Charlotte. They might have a different opinion. I just didn't want it to come from anyone else, and I just wanted us to be united, and we all stood together. But I was just the one that kind of spoke it, and we crafted a really nice thing with the vicar to be able to do that. So in some ways I tried to do things from what I was thrown at me, and the other times I just was a sheep and just followed someone for their advice and gravitated towards his friends because, you know, they were kind of father figure role models, I suppose, that I gravitated towards, and just, you know, wanted to maybe grab that to just keep him, you know. Yeah.
Would you say you felt a pressure though of like once he'd passed away? Did you feel a pressure of like I'm the man of the house, or like I need to do certain things? And I know, like, obviously was it Rachel that you gave away and things like that? Do you know what I mean? Filling in certain things that I might be pushing for something that doesn't exist, but as in like I'm just wondering out of curiosity.
It's not massively jumping into my head, so I don't know. I think I did things that would have alluded to being man of the house, but I wouldn't say so. As I've got older, I've wanted to do things on his behalf, like, you know, give Rachel away, or like my sister's children, try and, you know, tell them about him even though he's not here. But yeah, I think we're the three of us, the four of us, mum included, we're all quite strong characters. So I don't recall Harry taking on sort of the man of the house role, but he was definitely the one that probably myself and my sister would go to if we needed anything, because we didn't want to put the emotional instability, let's say, on my mum at that point. But we're very, for me personally, it made me very, very protective of my brother and my sister, my mum, and like even sort of friends as well. Like it made me become very protective of people, and I always wanted to be there to support people, and I think you certainly did the same. But then I think by doing that, we then both forgot to look after ourselves, as we should have looked after ourselves better in terms of mentally how we were doing with it. So that's why I feel like over the last few years I've probably grieved quite a lot, because it just caught up with me, and I realized that I was always trying to make sure everyone around me was okay, and protect everyone else around me, but then by forgetting that I need that as well. But I think you did I definitely put the bins out way more than you should.
always comes down to bins.
That's it. It's all about the bins.
I think you were even as teachers at school, going back to what Harry said earlier, where they would come and speak to him. So they were naturally trying to
better behaved than you, that's why.
Well, to be honest, that was German, and I remember, and I didn't like German. But I was quite not naughty at school. I'd wind my teachers up, and then I'd stop if I knew I was going to get in trouble. But after he passed away, like my mind completely flipped on that, and I was really dedicated to revising for my GCSEs, I was really intense with it. But German was like my area where I was like, no, I'm not great at languages, and that's where I was naughty. But the teachers almost set that path slightly for Harry, I think, and whether it's right or wrong, I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, but I think they put that pressure a little bit potentially on you by coming.
The stigma of man of the house, probably what the pressure is, because thinking out loud, my mom became the man of the house because she probably told me to put the bins out, and she made the dinner and she did all the washing.
She's a great delegator.
She went out and worked. She ferried us around, and it's kind of like she in essence became man of the house, and the sub man of the house was the sibling there and nearest that she needed to pull in. For example, when Rachel and I went to uni, my sister was at home. She was like the second, my mum's partner in crime, really. And then when Rachel was, and you kind of have different strengths, and you just ended up we all just fit into that role. And Rachel and I spent a lot of time, a few years overseas as well. My sister was at home, so she probably played it more than us, to be honest. But yeah, I'd say my mom was, and she just used us how she wished. Sounds terrible, but
yeah, no, she's clever.
It doesn't. I was quite interesting what you said. Like, we've definitely had a bit of I had a fallout with Kira quite literally last week over the difference when I want to be the fun big sister role. But if she doesn't look after her money, or if she is going out too much and not revising, I do massively feel like that comes down to me as a person that houses her and looks after her and needs to make sure she's on the right path. And we literally had the conversation last week. I ended up calling up Rasheen as well, because I got so upset. I would love to have just been a fun big sister she could call if she got too drunk, or if she ran out of money and like needed £10. But like, I have to do all of, like, I do that most of the time, but then there are times I have to step in and I have to be sterner, and I have to tell her to like stop going out, or I have to try and step in there for support that I wouldn't have normally had to. And I think me and Rasheen get along with that a bit better. And like, as Rasheen spoke about when she was first struggling, like I guess early days with Dad, when your depression was the worst, you've got a lot better now at accepting help, and you know what you can and can't do, and you're quite independent on that. But I definitely do really wish sometimes I didn't have to do all of that. It doesn't mean I resent it. Like, I love looking after my sisters, and one of the things we'll always cry about is if I start saying that and then they start saying thank you, and we end up in this like never-ending loop of they feel guilty that I feel that, and I feel guilty that they know that, and you end up in this conversation where everyone's just sad, and they're sad because it comes down to Dad died, and now we don't have him. And it's exactly what Rasheen said, like, well, that's just happened, so you can be sad and then you just have to get on with it. But I don't know how Rasheen feels, but like, weirdly, when Dad first died, I didn't feel strong enough as the oldest sibling. I'm actually quite impressed I got through this whole thing without crying, to stand up and do Dad's eulogy. I knew straight away I wouldn't be able to do it, and Rasheen knew straight away that you wanted to do it. I didn't even stand out. I left her out like a lamb for slaughter and just sat there and cried the entire time. So I definitely think, I guess what I'm saying in that is like, there have been times when my two younger sisters have also stepped up and massively supported me, and probably done way more than just the typical younger sister role. So I guess I'm agreeing with exactly what you said. You kind of just go into practical, what needs to happen and what can I do to make sure everything still runs as smoothly as possible. But I'll pause.
Also, like, just this toss up of like, we're still quite young, and so like, you're doing all these massive things, but also wanting to remember to live your life. And so like, I always say to Sinead, there's three of us, not that I'd be a good person to take this job anyway, but you know, not that I would be the best person to act as that sort of parent figure, but there's no point both of us doing it. You know, at least one of us can act as the parent and one of us can act as the crazy sibling. And that's why I think, earlier to the point about guilt, I feel guilty that Sinead takes on that role, because I have never tried to, because I don't think it's productive for me to also join in, you know, too many cooks kind of situation. But I think it's interesting. I think it's a really interesting idea of sort of the way that you react, because perhaps you feel you should. And I think, like with the eulogy, I think in my head I saw it as more of an opportunity to speak on behalf of my sisters, because I knew that Sinead doesn't like public speaking, and I knew that would make her really uncomfortable, and Kira was a baby girl, so I didn't want to make her do that. And so I was actually happy to do that. And then we had, I think we talked about this in our last call, but we did have another recent awards dinner, and I think we kind of just naturally fell into the same rhythm, but I was also okay with that. And I think it's funny to me how things like that are okay, but then there's, as Sinead said, there's been so many other things where it's kind of flip-flopped. And I think I always find it funny, because there'll be some situations and some days where I need to be looked after, and then there's some situations and days where I'm doing the looking after. And I think it's so interesting to me to like understand the split between that, and like when that changes and how I feel and what's going on with my life and what's going on with everyone else's life, like when I need those changes and when it does shift from, you know, being the helper to being the helpy, if you will. And yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing, which I don't think I haven't kind of got my head around it yet, but I think I'm just still trying to remind myself just to kind of be kind about it and just take it easy, and just remember that there are some days that you're going to need more looking after than others, and there's some days where you might feel top of the world and someone else doesn't, and the day that you don't feel amazing, someone else might feel how you felt when you were on the day that you're top of the world. So I kind of just try and remind myself of that constantly, and that kind of definitely helps me to just sort of have a clearer perspective on it, I think, as well, more than anything.
I think that's what everything like everyone's just said is so lovely, and like what you just said, Rasheen, about like it's a bit of a balancing act, I guess, isn't it, of kind of knowing when you need to step up and maybe you look after Sinead and it's, you know, you and Kira kind of, you know, helping her out, and then when it's, you know, the other way around, it's like, no, like I need looking after right now. And Sinead, I can so relate to the hat of older sister, and then I guess older carer kind of thing, because that is ultimately like that feeling that just as the oldest sibling, like that, I think, again, don't ever want to talk for anyone, but I know it's something that I feel. It's just I'm the oldest. Do you know what I mean? And there, I've really had to, over the years, we've kind of figured out our dynamic now, me, my mum, and my brother. But for a long time, it was like, because I essentially brought him up, like he would sometimes call me mummy because he was so like, I think, confused with like, wait, who's what? Like, what's going on? And getting that balance between I'm not his mum, you know, but he will come to me for certain things that he won't go to my mum for, and he will listen to me for certain things that he won't go to my mum for. So I then have to judge the situation of, is he coming to me because he wants me to be that big sister right now, of like, right, Luke, I think this is what you need to do, blah, blah, blah. Or is he just wanting me to be just Libby, his sister, right now? Do you know what I mean? Because they're actually two completely different things. So
yeah, I think sorry, Libby.
No, go.
I think for us, our grandparents played a really crucial role in keeping things, in keeping us all in a good place. They were kind of like the strength, I think, of the four of us, and going to their house was like something we used to do when Dad was still alive. So there was like stability there as well. They were incredibly, I think, important to the journey that we were all going on. Yeah, I don't think we would have been able to do it without them, really. But also, I think our sister, she, I don't know, I've only just sort of came to this realization in like the past 30 seconds, but I think she's, and I hope she won't mind me saying this, she's great at telling us what to do. It's fantastic, actually. But she's never shown weakness when it comes like emotional. I haven't seen her cry much for my dad. She doesn't really talk about my dad much, and I actually think she's doing that because she doesn't want to put us in a position, because we're the younger ones. She calls us the twins sometimes in her little silly little way, because she very much sees it as like she wants to look after us.
So she plays that protector role.
Yeah,
sounds like what you're saying.
And it's sort of, it's just quite interesting, because I kind of just really thought about that over the last like minute or two. And I think also, like, when Harry did do the eulogy as well at the funeral, taking on sort of those little roles, me and my sister were there, but he probably remembers us stood behind him, but we definitely formed a queue where we hid. So But yeah, it's just, yeah, I think you never really want to take on too much of a mom or a dad role because you're a sibling. It's completely different. But naturally, like what you say, Sinead, like sometimes it is necessary to do so. And I think at the age the three of us are at now, we know where our strengths are. So I will recognize if, let's say, Harry or Charlotte might need some time because they're dealing with their own stuff, and then I might then come to the front and say, okay, well, if anybody needs me, just let me know. If mom needs me, then I'll be there. And then when, you know, I've got stuff going on that I need to focus my attention somewhere else, then you know, that's our sort of dynamic, and I think it works.
Yeah,
it works pretty well.
A lot of it for me is again, I always find these things really, really hard to talk about, because 3 years ago, I wouldn't have done this call. I wouldn't have been able to keep myself together and have this conversation. So I always hate how, you know, it sounds a bit like so stable when that is just the surface level, and just being able to do that in literally those 2 years. But for me, it's a lot of self-care, right? And that is like knowing when you need help, and self-care is about putting yourself first, and the stronger you are, the stronger you can be for other people. And that's something that I've learned so much in the last 2 years out of the last, you know, 18 is knowing when I need to close the door on everything. I need to slow my life down. I need to seek help from different services, speak to different people, build on the mechanisms I might have had in place to make myself stronger, but then also just acknowledge when I feel like shit and I just want to not do anything. And then that's when you just learn of when you might anticipate you're getting into that territory of, oh, I'm not feeling great, so I'm going to back out and let someone else move forward. Yeah. And then I'm feeling great, so right, step aside, you know, type thing. And yes, I couldn't empower and endorse self-care more than I do, because, you know, it's with all the emotions you go through, it allows you to feel every emotion. And if you feel angry, feel angry. If you feel sad. And yeah.
Just to go back to, there's a point that someone just made, but I was gonna might have to let that one go. Oh, that's really going to annoy me. As soon as we finish the recording, I'll remember it. But yeah, I think if everyone's, I think, happy to kind of like end it there. I think. Oh no, I know what I was going to say. I was just going to say, Rachel and Harry, you saying the whole kind of, you know, you're maybe at a point as siblings where maybe just because you are that bit older, sorry, but like at the point where, sorry, but where, sorry guys, but at the point where, you know, as you know, you've kind of got your partners and, you know, families and whatever, and I think that's actually given me a bit of hope of kind of like, okay, and hopefully maybe Sinead and Rashina as well, of like, because my brother's 18, so he's like still, that's why I want to protect him so much, because it's like he's young, I want to help him, I want to, you know, I want to be there for him. And I think as you get older, it levels out, hopefully. That's what I'm hoping for. And do you know what's so funny is my brother WhatsApped me yesterday, and it was the first time he WhatsApped me and he goes, so what are we getting mum for Christmas? And I said, Luke, I said, I'm just taking a minute. I said, because that's the first time you've ever texted me to say, so what are we getting mum for Christmas? So I was like, maybe we've turned a corner. But
I think just on that, Libby, like, it's a massive point is playing that protector role, but allow yourself to be protected as well.
Yeah. 100%.
And if no one's doing that at the moment, then try and find it somewhere else, whether that's looking for support or, you know, yeah, as I'm to say, allow yourself to be protected.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I think it's just an instinct thing. I literally, it's like this feeling of, you know, and I let other people look after me for sure. I think it's just with him, it's like, it's just an instinct of, you know, I want to be there and everything. But
Yeah.
I've literally loved this conversation so much. I hope everyone else has as well. Is there any last things that anyone wanted to add?
No, it was really lovely, and you guys it was a really nice first chat. There was a really nice second chat. It's going to be quite sad to maybe not chat again, but maybe we will.
You've got our details, so
thank you so much for having us. Honestly, it was really nice, and I really we would hope we can stay in contact and support as much as possible going forward. I'm not promising a marathon or anything because I'm not but we'd really love to stay in touch. So thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, likewise, and thank you everyone for your vulnerability. I think it's really special to have the platform and discussion like this. So thank you to everyone for being so open. And yeah, really enjoyed it, and especially if would love to stay in touch.
Well, we've got. Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, just to go off the bat of what you both just said, is in the new year, because the more people that we speak to, like from doing this podcast and just chats with more people as we're gaining exposure, I think a lot of people just want to chat to people and they just want to chat about their experience. I love learning from other people's experience. I'm like, oh, when, you know, if that happens to me, like, or when I get to that point, or like, do you know what I mean? Like a bit of advice and all that kind of stuff. So in the new year, we will be launching a monthly drop-in where it will be maybe an hour and a half, kind of once a month. Need to figure out what day it will be. I don't know, first Monday of each month, whatever. But where it will literally just be a drop-in. Anyone can drop in and we can chat and all that kind of stuff. Because I know that's why I really enjoy doing these kind of things. It's just chatting to people. And learning through different people's experiences. So definitely look out for that. So yeah.
I think definitely for me, like I think I said this on the first call we had, but I haven't had a conversation like this about my father and losing my father until the last 2 weeks. And that's sort of 18 years ago. So, you know, drop-ins and things like that, get consistency with it. Like, you know, I'll be there, and I think it's a brilliant thing to do. And I think you guys are doing a great job. Don't like to big my brother up too much, but seriously, you should, all you trustees should be super proud of yourself of what you're doing, because it's certainly, you know, I find it incredible, and I'm sure, you know, I speak for everybody on this call. So yeah, keep talking, to keep spreading the word and keep growing.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Lots of love. Take care.
Bye. Cheers. Take care. Bye-bye.